The two most basic words in object-oriented programming are object and class. Though they are often used interchangeably when speaking about object-oriented programming and when building applications, they are not the same thing. A class is code. Here you can see the beginning of a customer class. Notice the class keyword. It has properties such as email address and first name. The properties define the data managed by the class. The class also has functions such as validate. The functions define the actions or behaviors managed by the class. In object-oriented programming, these functions are called methods. Together, the properties and methods of a class define the class members. When coding, you are building classes with their appropriate members, that is, their properties and methods. The basic purpose of a class is to provide the definition for a particular type of object. So this class provides objects of type customer that can work with customer data and perform customer operations such as validate. An object is an instance of a class. It is created using the C# new keyword. This syntax creates a new instance of the customer class. That instance is an object. The variable then references the resulting object. Hence, it is often called an object variable. In this example, the customer object represents a specific customer. Using that variable, you can get or set any of the properties identified in the class. The object variable holds the state of the object, meaning it retains the values of its properties. You can also use the object variable to call any of the methods identified in the class. In this case, the validate method is called for this specific customer object. Objects only exist at runtime. When the application terminates, the object is gone. Any object state is gone unless it was stored somewhere, such as in a database. But the class still exists because the class is defined in the code. What about the term business object? You may hear or read something like, "We need to define the business objects." Confusingly, the term business objects normally refers to a class. In most cases, it refers to classes specifically defined for solving a business problem, like our customer class here. So the customer class could be referred to as a business object. Used in this context, a business object is not an object at all, it is a class. So an object is not a class, but a business object often does refer to a class. Yeah, this seems inconsistent to me too. When identifying and designing classes, it does not really matter what you call them, as long as it is clear that once you start coding, you are building classes. A common metaphor for understanding class versus object is a cookie cutter. A class defines the properties and actions for all of the objects created from it, similar to this cookie cutter. Cookies created from this cookie cutter can have different colors and decorations. And of course, a fly action, since it is an airplane. You can then use the cookie cutter to create instances, each of which is an object. Each object defines its own values for the properties. So the first airplane cookie object has a yellow color with white stripe decorations. And the second airplane cookie object has a red color and white stripe decorations, and so on. The main point to get from this metaphor is that the class provides the definition of the object type. It defines the properties and actions appropriate for the thing, in this case airplane cookie. Once you define a class, you can create any number of unique objects from that class. Each object is created as an instance of the class. Each has its own values for the properties, in this example, color and decorations. And each object can perform the defined actions, in this example, to fly. Let's talk about one more term at this point. Entity. We just said that a class defines the properties and actions appropriate for the thing. In that case, the airplane cookie. Calling each of the things that we want to create a class for things is a little imprecise, so the common term to use is entity. If you are familiar with database design, the same term is used in the same context to define the things that are significant enough to consider. Same in this case. Anything from the real world that is significant enough to be represented as a class in the application is referred to as an entity. Note that this use of the term entity has nothing to do with Entity Framework, though Entity Framework also uses the term entity to define the significant things. Let's put these terms together using an example. Say we are building a customer management system. From the name of the application, it would seem that customer would be an entity. It is important enough to consider as a class. After some analysis, we determined that there should indeed be a customer class, and it has a first name and last name properties and a go on an adventure method. When executing the application, the user may request all customers with a last name that starts with B-A-G. So the application may create two instances of the customer class, one for Bilbo and one for Frodo. These are our two objects created from the class. Bilbo and Frodo are both customer objects. They are instances of the customer class, and either one or both can execute the Go on an Adventure method. Now that we know the difference between an object and a class, let's define object-oriented programming.